You can hear me. Oh, welcome. Thank you for those who are joining me in Zoom, and thank you for those who are over on Facebook. And yeah, I should have been on Instagram, but I'm not. But I'm going to post the video live over there because everything is just a little bit crazy. But I'm so grateful that you're joining me live here on Facebook. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate. Just put them in the chat and I will get to the questions. And if you have any questions here on Zoom, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So as we get started, my name is Joanna Danielle, and I am the founder of Hostess Cars. I create online courses and do retreats and other materials for people who are healing from childhood trauma. I absolutely love what I do, so that's why I'm here. Somebody's asking me if it's a different Zoom room number. People are getting a bit lost. Just bear with me a moment. Let me just give this person the Zoom room number. Right, okay. So today I'm talking about what is trauma and how does it affect relationships. So I'm gonna dive in. Before I dive in, I must tell you that sometimes the content can be really sensitive, and just to look after yourselves. And if you notice anything that comes up, to just kind of breathe and to, you know, step away from this for a while. The recording is going to be up as well. It's going to be on the YouTube channel as well. So, you know, do things to ground yourself and kind of look after yourself if there's anything that comes up for you. Because right now I'm going to go through a list of what is trauma. Now, when I first started talking about trauma, for people who know, somebody said, and I always remember that because it was so significant, that I didn't experience sexual abuse, Joanna, because once upon a time, and for a lot of people, I think still, that's what we know trauma to be. If we experience sexual abuse, then we've experienced trauma. If we didn't, then we didn't experience trauma. Now we know, and some of you here might know because you've attended my retreats and my workshops before, and other people's retreats and workshops, that's not the only thing that is considered traumatic for a child. And we can go into, I mean, we can stay here for a long time talking about the neuroscience and how events that have an emotional connection get stored in the brain and how that kind of grows with you. So when you grow up, it doesn't automatically disappear. You have to really process the events that have happened and learn strategies and skills to cope, to let go of it. Because when the events happen, you learn strategies to cope, and it's those things that we take with us into our relationships. So for example, even before I go into what is trauma, I'm going to talk about like one way how it shows up in our relationships. So it's called unfinished business, one author calls it, like a conversation that you're having with your mom, for example, and you're arguing with your husband or your wife, your children. You're having a discussion, you're having an argument, if there's a conflict, and you're using the same words, the same mannerisms, you're feeling the same kind of way. They're saying that's unfinished business between you and your mom from all the way back then. So because that thing is unresolved, it kind of goes with you. So that's just one example of how it goes with us. And for those who might be listening and, you know, kind of think, I'm grown up, when I'm arguing with my wife, I'm talking to her. Just kind of think about it. Think about when you reflect on it, who else do you see do those things? And who else do you see say those things? And how were you feeling? Was it relevant to the context that you were in at that time? Or did it have some connection somewhere else? Because what we know to be true is that the brain is the brain and it records information. And what it does is kind of, when you're triggered, the argument might be the trigger, it kind of gives you a way to cope because that's how you know to cope. Okay, so that's one example, but I don't kind of want to digress. I want to kind of do it systematically. So first I'm going to go into what is trauma. And we've identified that, we've clarified rather, that trauma is not only sexual trauma, there's so many other types of. And I mean, even in sexual trauma, there are people who we know that have experienced fondling, but they don't consider that trauma. Or they might cease, you know, people might, you know, expose themselves to them and they don't consider that to be traumatic. But there are effects of it that is carrying out in their lives, in the way they show up in their relationships, their romantic relationships especially, and how it affects intimacy. because it will affect intimacy. The way they parent, because you'll kind of either be hypervigilant or you ignore signs from your children that they have also experienced the same thing, because nobody kind of took it seriously when you talked about it, and so you don't know how to take it seriously for your children either. All right, so here are some things to consider that the Center for Disease Control use as what is trauma. So there is, did you grow up in a family where you were insulted, humiliated, where you were, or were you physically harmed? Were you physically hurt? Were you beaten? Were you hit and marks were left on you? Okay. Or did a parent or adult in your household go to prison? Were there substance use? Did a parent or your caretaker use substances when you were growing up? Did, I said somebody go to prison. Was there anybody, a parent or your caregiver, that was diagnosed with mental health? Or was your parents separated or divorced? That would be considered one for child in terms of childhood trauma. Now, as you're going through, just kind of write a 1 beside anything that resonates with you. Just put a 1 beside anything that resonates. So first we said, were you slapped, physically harmed? Were you hit and marks were left? So that would be 1. Were you touched, fondled, people exposed themselves to you, or in any other form of sexual abuse? That would be another 1. Did you grow up in a household where there were substance use? Did a parent or caregiver use alcohol or drugs? That would be considered 1. Did a parent or a caregiver goes to prison when you were a child growing up in the household? That would be another 1. Did your parents separate or divorce? That would be 1. Okay. Now, I don't want you to worry too much if the ones are stacking up. If the ones are stacking up, it's really something to be aware of and to know what are the effects are. And I'm going to talk about just briefly about some of the effects of that before I go into anything else. Okay, so another one is, I talked about slapped or hit. Were you threatened? Were you slapped and threatened when you were younger? Okay, by a parent or a caregiver. We talked about mental illness and we talked about prison. Just bear with me a moment. Sorry about that. When we're live, all kinds of things happen. Did you have enough to eat? Did you have enough to eat? Or were you taken care of in terms of somebody, did you have clean clothes? Were you bathed? Were you changed? Were you given meals to eat? Or did you have to kind of look after yourself when you were younger? So look at all of that and see how many 1s you have. For each 1 that I read, just put 1 beside it and to see how many that you score. What's your score at the end of that? Kind of just add them up. So if it's a household with parental separation or divorce, a household where there was a substance use, a household where there was mental health, somebody was diagnosed with a mental health problem, or you were slapped or pushed, you didn't have enough to eat, so you would have 5. So you would have scored 5 on the ACE score, the Adverse Childhood Experience score. Okay, so now why are these significant? What does all that mean, Joanna? That happened to me when I was a child and I'm now grown up. What does that mean? I'm really glad you asked, because it means a lot. So for example, a score of 4 or more puts you at risk of lots of physical illnesses. It also puts you at risk of things like depression, suicidal ideation, obesity, and lots of physical illness as well. We are learning about things like heart disease, autoimmune illnesses, and a host of other physical illnesses we're learning about more and more through research that comes as a result of adverse childhood experience. And it's the unprocessed trauma. And that's why I'm talking to you, because I know that lots of people who have experienced these things in childhood kind of just grow and it's left, and I'm going to leave it there. I don't have to do anything about it. It stays there and is going to look after itself, and it doesn't look after itself. It needs care and attention, because the child that happened to still lives in you, wanting that care and attention and healing, needs time to process it, needs to go into a relationship with a therapist, a counselor that is safe and secure, that can help you to work through those places, work through those things. Otherwise, and that's the next part of why we're here, it does get to manifest itself in relationships. One of the relationships that I like talking about the most, where I'm trying to get my book, where it manifests itself, it's in parenting. But I'm not talking purely about parenting right now, because it manifests itself in all of our relationships, interpersonal relationships, in our romantic relationships. It manifests itself in our spiritual life, how we connect with or don't connect with God, whether we can trust or not trust Him, how we do that, whether we can trust or not trust our friends, whether we trust people enough to allow them close. And there are people who are married, but their spouses, their partners, are still not close, because you cannot allow anybody close. And that might be through different reasons. So for example, one score would be parental separation or divorce. Now, a child experiences that as rejection. A child can experience that as rejection. I'm from a culture where in Jamaica, lots of people were moving abroad to go and work, because that was just how it was. People went abroad to work and children were left. And I used to hear this as a teenager growing up, but my father didn't leave. And we weren't too happy that he didn't leave, because we didn't get to the name brand stuff and all of that kind of thing. As adults, we're so glad now that he didn't, because the narrative that I was hearing growing up wasn't happy. I didn't know that there were people that were wearing nice clothes and living in massive houses because dad sent money, but there was also this deficit that I didn't understand when I was growing up. So I know that there's a lot of people that experience that as rejection. Even though dad comes every couple of years, or maybe come home every year, it's still not the same as having him there with me, or even if it was mom that left. So that is experiences to a child as rejection. Now your adult self now understands that, they had to go away to work. They, the economic climate at the time meant that they had to go. I understand why they go. I don't have anything against them. There's no bitterness. I've forgiven. I'm fine. I understand. But the child, that's the adult. And I think that's really good information for the adult to have, but the child still don't have that information. And it's, how do you go about updating the child and said, you know what? I know those times when you cried yourself to sleep because mom wasn't there. And I remember the day when you made a decision that you're not going to feel because you can't cry. Because if you cry, who was going to look after your younger siblings? And so you didn't cry. But now you can't cry either. And now you're lacking emotional connection because of that cutting off, that separating of the pain of not having a parent around, and that separation that you had to do with the pain in order to cope and to get by day to day, to go to school and function, and to just be as a child. But that separation still exists now as an adult, because when we shut down negative emotions, positive emotions go too. So you might be married and your partner says you are not emotionally available. You might hear words like that. You might hear things like, why are you so frigid or disconnected, or why is there a wall? People might, you might struggle in your interpersonal relationships because people will see you as not being accessible. How come? And sometimes that deficit that you experience might show up as aggression. Some people are very angry and very prickly, but we say we're plain and we tell people the truth. We will just say things, but it's just us protecting the hurt parts of ourselves. And it affects relationship. Or another thing I get to hear a lot is, I am a loner, I don't need people. And that's not even true, because we all need people. We were created for connection. And because our pain happens in relationships, you're going to need people in order to heal. You cannot heal in isolation. You cannot heal on your own. You're going to need people, safe people, of course, but you're going to need people. And that's why the therapeutic relationship, the relationship between you and a counselor, that's why it's so precious, so important that it's a safe space, because that models it. Or, for example, what we're doing starting Monday, we're doing a challenge where we're going to meet like this via Zoom, where every day from Monday to Sunday rather, I'm going to meet you like this 10-15 minutes. I'm going to answer questions, give you prompts, and help you to begin to connect with the story and to write the story so you can release some of those pent-up emotions. Now, that is not by any means counseling. I have to say that. It will not be therapy. It will be a group situation where we're learning how to connect with the parts of our story that we've been afraid to connect with. And we can release, give update to the child who don't understand, give them information that they don't have now, and tell them it's going to be okay. And we're going to kind of guide you in that process. So the link for that is going to be above the video or below in the comment section. If you haven't yet signed up. We're trying to take 100 women who are ready for that kind of work and that kind of connection to be able to do this work. Okay. So one other thing here is, if you have any questions in Zoom, please put them in the section. You don't have to put it where everybody can see it to all panelists. You can put it just to me privately and I can answer your questions. Here is another thing why relationships are affected. Although the research shows, you know, the list of things that I just read out, whatever your score is, research shows that when we've experienced trauma in early life, the chances of secure attachment is nil to none. So we know already that we're going to have some relational problems. We're going to struggle relationally because of the things that we've experienced. Here's another thing. There are families that we're from, all of us are, and in those families, when we experience what we experience, nobody talks about it. So for example, in some families, there is a refusal to say the word abuse. We just won't say it. So there's somebody who was abused in the family, but nobody will say the word. We will not talk about it. We will not mention it. We'll pretend it didn't happen. And so you kind of suffer with your pain on its own because there's nobody to stay alongside you, to help you, to talk through it. There's silence around mom and dad leaving. What did that feel like for you? As adults now, there are families that still can't talk about that. What was it like for you when mom left when we were 14, when we were 10, when we were 9? What was it like for you when we had to go live with grandma, or we had to go live with auntie and they weren't very nice to us? Or they may still have been very nice to us. What was it like for you when you hit certain stages in your life and there was nobody to talk through those things with, those important stages with? Because mom called on the phone perhaps every week, maybe even every day, but it's still not the same. There's a refusal to accept the sadness. And so in that place, there are coping mechanisms that we develop to learn how to cope. And those coping mechanisms that we develop as children, they come with us. So that shutdown and silence, we'll just pretend and go and play. We will cry on our own and hide the hurt. And I hear people call themselves now things like needy. I think I'm very needy. And it's not needy. It's just that we all need connection. We all want connection. What the culture of silence in those instances that I've just named does is that we might go after relationships that cannot provide those things. So even though those are the things that we really need, because we've experienced the opposite, that's what we're used to. And so what we will do is, though we want to have the partner that is emotionally available, can connect with us, can talk to us, can work with us, can grow with us, because what we're used to is something opposite, what we do is we will go for the partner that cannot connect with us, cannot work with us, cannot grow with us. And so we're stuck in this battle trying to get this person to do what we want, and they can't do it. They can't do it unless they do their work, unless they acknowledge why they can't. And you have to acknowledge why you need it, and you have to do your work for you, they do their work for them, and that's how the relationship grows. Now, I know of many cases where that happens, and the relationships can grow and become safe, secure, beautiful places, but it requires work. And that's why I'm here, because I know that we often ignore, pretend, put on our mask, whatever the mask is, whether it's career progression, whether it's building our businesses, our empires, you know, we're leaving legacies and we're doing amazing things, but there's still that legacy of hurt that we're still passing on to the next generation because we've not been able to allow ourselves to deal with it, to deal with the fact that dad left and I felt abandoned, to deal with the fact that mom left and I felt rejected, to deal with the fact that the abuse happened and nobody acknowledged it. Nobody believed me. What was that like for me? Okay. Now, one of the things that really works well when we've experienced trauma is having empathetic support, having somebody to understand it with us, to help us understand what it was like when we begin to investigate. How did those things that Joanna just read out, how did those things affect me? And having somebody to help you to investigate the impact of that and help you look at, well, how am I doing this in my relationships? How do I do this with my friends? Check in with your friends. I remember it was about 3 years ago on New Year's Day, I was talking to a friend, and that's the friend that is able to tell me anything. She just gives it to me, and sometimes it's really brutal. And I remember her saying to me 3-4 years ago, she says to me, Joanna, why do you push away women? And I said, no, I don't. I had a lot of female friends at the time. I said, I do not. She says, you do. And she was giving me some examples. I wasn't having it. I was not having it at all. And as I investigated, we came off the phone. She was resolute. She was not giving in. She didn't say it in a harsh way. It was really loving. And I got off the phone. So I like to reflect and investigate. So I went and I'm investigating and I'm looking and I'm realizing that, hey, she's right. She is right. But why did she choose New Year's Day to tell me? I mean, it was a new year. I kind of wanted to be left alone. But now I had this information and I had to do something about it. I had to go investigate and find out why did I do that. So I investigated and I really had to call some people, text some people, and sit with a lot of stuff and go deep dive into me and the parts of me that was still needing to do relationships in an open, honest way. And that's why I put a post yesterday about working on relationships. And, maybe that's why I do this well, because I've had to do so much work on myself when it comes onto trauma and relationships. And so when I see the research that backs that up, and I know that that's the story for a lot of people, I know we have some work to do, people. And I know as women, we're amazing. We can do 1,000 things. We're running businesses. We're climbing career ladders. We're doing amazing things in the world. But there's still that thing where our relationships, we know that it's not as fulfilling as it could be. But we use other things to fill the void. So we fill the void with work, we fill the void with things, nice things, and we fill the void with academic achievements, and we're writing for journals, and we're speaking, and we're doing all these amazing things, and it doesn't fill the void. Because at the root, at the heart, that little girl needs addressing, needs healing, her pain needs validating, and she needs to learn how to express it and be and a safe space for her to do that in. And community is amazing for that. And that's why in the challenge we're meeting like this via Zoom, because my story, your story, can help somebody else grow. As we're growing, we're helping each other, because that safe relationship is necessary for that growth to happen. Okay, so a good relationship, I'm still want to read this. A good relationship can heal, but many are so afraid to open themselves up to that healing. And we find ways to make our relationship unsafe and fractious as well. If there's say we have a partner that is nice and caring and loving, there are many times, because trust is destroyed, that we can't trust that this person really loves us. And we don't really know how to fall into that love and support. And there might be a friend who is really genuine, but again, we don't know how to fall into that genuine love and support, because it's not something that we've experienced, and it's a deficit for us. So that's some of the ways. I mean, we could be here all day, and I love this topic, so I could talk about it a lot. But that's some of the ways that trauma will show up in our interpersonal relationships. Now, I don't even want to get into parenting and romantic relationships, because that's another minefield. But I want you that are here with me listening, and for those who will catch the replay, to really consider, how do I think about my story? Am I still in shame? And when I'm in shame, what do I do? Do I hide? Do I become angry? What do I do when I'm in shame? How do I hide it? How do I pretend? What's the mask that I'm wearing? Is it academic achievement? Is it career attainment? Is it building my business? What is it that I am using to hide behind? And I know that my relationships are not what they could be. And I know that I could enjoy this amazing relationship. I want connection. I miss it. I miss this thing that I've never had. And I see it all around me. I wish I had a friend that we could laugh and cry and talk and connect. I wish I could. I wish I had that, and I don't have it. And if I have it, how can I make it stronger? How can I extend that to my children and to my partner? How do I do that? We're starting that in the journal challenge. It's a free challenge, free to join, 7 days. You have me to ask questions for us to, I will send you a prompt every day and something for you to journal on. And then we'll come together like this every day, 10 to 15 minutes. You ask questions, I answer them, we dive deep, you journal, and you have a safe space to start to externalize the stuff, the pain. As I said, it's not counseling, so it will not replace that therapeutic relationship that you have. It will enhance it. It will add to it. What else was I going to say about that? Yeah, so come and join us. We're trying to take 100 women through this challenge with us starting Monday for 7 days. So there's still time. If you don't sign up, you won't get the prompts, you won't get anything. You can join us in Zoom, but you will not benefit in the same way from the safe space. Another thing is, if you don't like writing, if writing is not your thing, that's fine. I teach other ways of journaling as well. Okay, I will teach other ways of journaling. So please sign up for the challenge. Tell it to your friends, your girlfriends that you know need it. Tell it to your church sister, your neighbor, your mother, that you hear those things and you know they need it. Tell it to them and get them to sign up. So they don't have to be on Facebook. I know not everybody's there. You don't have to be on Facebook. You don't have to be on Instagram. But tell it to them so that they can come and be a part of it too. I hope I'll see you there. So I'm going to check Facebook to see if there are any questions. And if you have any questions here in Zoom, just, ask it here. Let me see if there's any question on Facebook. I'll give you a few minutes to see if you have any questions, and then we're going to just sign off and say bye. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any questions? Do you know, any insights? You understand everything? It was clear. We're good. We're on the same page. That's great. I'll go check Facebook. Just let me know. I'll wait here for a little, couple seconds. See if anybody have any questions, or everybody is good. Everybody's understanding. Okay. Righty. There are no questions. So I thank you so much for coming, for joining me. If you have any questions later, you can, inbox me your questions via WhatsApp, via Facebook, or via Instagram, and I'll be happy to answer. But I hope I'll see you in the challenge. Tell a sister about the challenge. All right. See you soon. Take care.